It's the spot. Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. I'm Jeremy, and this is my third vlog. This is Matt. He's going to ask me some questions about patriarchal societies and how that affects our art. Take it away, Matt.
Indeed. So, Jeremy, would you agree that we live in a patriarchal society?
I would.
And obviously, living in the society we do, it would impact our culture, our art more specifically. So I would like to know your opinions on the cinema, the impact of our patriarchal society upon cinema.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Thomas. My first thought would be that having a patriarchal society has really made it so that most of our directors and most of our writers are men. And as such, a lot of them do not know how to write for women, so you end up with a lot of tropes or caricatures of women, depending on what genre of film you get into. Yeah, it pretty much varies from style to style, but women tend not to be very three-dimensional characters in films.
Well, let's expand on that style to style. So, perhaps in Western films, for example, with the whole lassos and the cowboys and the kill the darn Indians.
I get you, John.
Good. What is your opinion?
Well, I believe we actually talked about this in class. Women in Westerns tend to be pretty much objects, damaged goods. In The Searchers, most of the major female characters are killed and raped, or just killed. In Unforgiven, it starts with a female prostitute getting horribly cut, and so on and so forth. A lot of violence is done to women. Women are usually objects that the hero wants, and they are willing to do things to protect them or to avenge them in Westerns. Women are generally pretty one-dimensional characters. They only serve as tools for the hero's motivations.
Moving on, how about fantasy or adventure? Or fantastic adventures?
Name some, Amir. Name me a fantasy.
Alright, a fantasy adventure. Putting me on the spot here. How about,
Oh! I just thought of one, Lord of the Rings.
Good.
Lord of the Rings is fantasy. Yeah, I mean, I think in fantasy you usually end up with lengthy epic adventures, or at least epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings. You usually end up with very few strong women characters.
Morning, guys.
How's it going? That was Dan. He's a hobo that we let live here.
So,
Say hi to the camera,
bro.
Dan.
I can't.
That's actually my sweatshirt. Moving along.
Taking everyone's stuff.
Moving along. Yeah, I think like in Lord of the Rings, there are very few strong female characters. They're usually the prize, honestly, that the hero gets at the end. Like in Mario, the entire time he's trying to save the princess. So, like, once Aragorn finally defeats Sauron and becomes king, he can get Arwen. Once Sam, helps Frodo finish his quest, he can marry Rosie. So on and so forth. Once Shelob finally... Oh, wait, no, Shelob doesn't get anybody. Yeah. You want to ask the next question, I guess?
Sure. But differing from fantasy adventure, it's a slightly different shoot-off, like superhero movies.
Ooh, superhero movies. That's interesting. Well, Amir, I would think that in superhero movies you usually end up with women as distractions or annoyances for the hero, but at the same time, the hero loves them above all else and is often willing to give up being the hero in order to attain the woman. Like in The Dark Knight or Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man has a very complex relationship with Mary Jane. It's really an interesting topic once you get down to it. Or Iron Man. Women in superhero movies usually tend to be on the sidelines. They are part of a help for the hero, but they're also the source of much consternation. Such as Spider-Man might have to go be Spider-Man, and then he's late for Mary Jane's play, and that messes with his head and causes him to lose his powers. So I think that kind of sums up women's superhero movies.
Moving quite along, how about mystery movies?
Mystery movies.
Such as, how about...
Like Chinatown?
Yes, Chinatown, or Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. That's almost like a horror movie, actually. I would think Silence of the Lambs is more of a horror movie.
Alright.
So maybe we could talk about that later.
We will.
Yes. But as far as mysteries go, I mean, usually noir movies, you'll have the femme fatale, the dangerous woman, you know, who's dark and wants to kill you. I think that's really the point of noir films, is that everyone and everything wants to kill you, including like the darkness and everything. You end up with like the hooker with a heart of gold, where the hero has to redeem her at the end. That's usually what women end up being. They end up being either completely irredeemable or something that the hero has to redeem. The hero usually tries to redeem the woman in those kinds of movies.
How about horror, such as
Silence of the Lambs. Horror is a very interesting genre because it's one of the only genres where women usually end up getting the best deal. Such as like in slasher movies, it's usually a woman that survives. As long as she's like not a slut, it's always going to be the girl. The black guy is doomed, the jock is doomed, the stoner is going to get really sympathetic and then he's going to die. But the nice girl is usually going to be the one that escapes, and sometimes her boyfriend. He'll ride her coattails. But usually it's just the nice girl. Same thing with Silence of the Lambs. She's kind of the nice but strong and independent woman living in a man's world, and that's actually an interesting movie where it relates to gender, because there's a lot of scenes that show how difficult it is to be a woman in that line of work. Like the scene when she gets into the elevator, and it's like she's really, really short, and there's all these huge, tall guys, and they all just kind of like are staring down at her, and it's so incredibly awkward. But you really get to feel her pain in that. It kind of, I feel like that movie is almost feminist in a way, because she's really the most morally upright character, more upright than any of the other men. And the only other woman in the movie, well, there's two other women. One is trapped in a hole the whole time, so she's basically just a tool for the story to go forward, and the other one is just the female friend. So I think that sort of sums up horror.
Very good. Capital, I might say. How about movies about the black culture in our society?
Black culture. Elaborate, Jesus.
Well, there seems to be a difference between the different ethnic cultures within the race due to various economic backgrounds and historical backgrounds. So concerning African American black culture, cinema based on that.
Okay.
Such as...
Okay, I see where you're coming from, Ladanian. Like in Do the Right Thing, or Barbershop, or any Tyler Perry movie.
Right.
Or blaxploitation movies, like a Pam Grier type movie, or something like Jackie Brown. Yeah, women in those movies are usually just stereotypical black women, which is like loud and angry and strong. It's pretty much all you end up with. Like in blaxploitation, they're all loud, angry, strong, and sexy. And buxom.
As long as you say it, it's okay.
With big boobies.
So, with sci-fi movies, how about it?
Well, that's an interesting one. I guess it's kind of complex, because sci-fi tends to be all over the place. Well, I guess Star Trek, the women in Star Trek are usually just innocent bystanders, like on the ship, or they're just kind of there. Sci-fi is a little bit more complex. I think there aren't quite as many tropes to hit in sci-fi. They tend to vary from whatever would really please the story. Although you do tend to end up with like the alien type woman who's like in a new foreign culture type thing, or you know, the hero doesn't really know how to deal with her, but then she becomes an object of eroticism, kind of like Avatar, or I don't know, Barbarella. I don't know if that would count as sci-fi, but something like that, where it's like really the female alien is kind of like sexy, but also really weird at the same time.
Indeed.
Got any more questions?
Just one. How about comedies? And I know comedy movies, humor movies is a very vast genre to say, but in specifics, how about cynical comedies, dark comedies?
Dark comedies. Like a satire type thing?
Indeed.
Well, with satire, I think almost every single character tends to be a caricature. This is Spinal Tap, for instance. Every single character in that movie is some sort of like a stereotype. It's like the completely idiotic but really full of himself lead guitarist, the lead singer who's into all these different mystical things, the girlfriend who tries to split up the band, the long-suffering manager, and so on and so forth. Oh, the drummer who always dies in ridiculous ways, like he explodes at the end. Or you could go into like Dr. Strangelove, which barely has any women. I think it's just one woman at the beginning, and she's just there to be sexy, I think. But with comedies, women tend to be, as all characters in comedies, tend to be just tools that achieve the ultimate purpose of the movie, which is to make you laugh. Comedies, it's very different to judge characters in comedies as opposed to dramas, because dramas you usually need a lot of character development, whereas comedies you pretty much need a couple of character traits that are just really big, and then as long as those character traits are funny, that's a good character for a comedy.
Very good. One last one.
Oh, really?
Just a curveball. How would you describe older movies, such as in the 1940s, like Casablanca, or say Goodbye to Mr. Chips, or whatever the name is? What would you say the role of women in those style movies are?
Well, they're usually sex objects to a certain extent. You usually end up, unless they're like the black maid character, they're usually supposed to be somebody that the audience is attracted to. And they're very rarely the main character, and if they are, they usually have a lot of issues. Like in Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara is messed up. Is that her name, Scarlett O'Hara? Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, I don't remember that whole movie. I just remember that she's got some serious issues. To the point that the guy that loves her the entire time just kicks her to the curb at the end. But older movies were usually a bit more sexist, I would think, or openly sexist against women, in that they were usually they'd often have them wearing like push-up bras, or they'd just be like the love interest. Like that's where you get the Hollywood love interest from older movies. It's a little bit more simplistic, I think, than in modern movies. Whereas in modern movies, like, we have more tropes that we hit, but at the same time they tend to be a little bit more rounded because movie audiences have seen so many movies by this point, so they've seen so many of those tropes, so they need to throw in a few curveballs to make them seem a bit more interesting.
Great. This concludes our interview.
All right. Thank you very much. Remember, I'm Jeremy, and this is my co-host, Regis. Have a good day.